The first time I noticed something off about Eliam Stroud, it wasn't his words, it was his timing. He always appeared at the right moments. When my screen glowed late at night in the half-lit corner of the design lab, he'd suddenly walk in, carrying a mug of coffee and a disarming grin. "Still saving the company again, Ray," he'd say. I'd laugh it off, brushing my hair behind my ear and pretending it didn't bother me that he seemed to know exactly when I stayed after hours. At Hendrix Dynamics, timing meant everything. We weren't just designing machines, we were designing futures. Industrial drones, AI-based navigation systems, and robotics that could change the logistics landscape. I'd been the youngest lead systems designer they'd ever hired, and Eliam had been assigned as my supporting analyst, a polite title for a shadow. He was charming, deliberate, and curious. Too curious. He remembered every line of code I mentioned, every draft I opened, every half-thought idea I murmured aloud. At first, I thought it was flattery. Then it felt like surveillance. But paranoia in the corporate world can be a professional liability, especially for a woman trying to keep her position in a boardroom full of polished smiles and sharper knives. So I said nothing. Not at first. The project that changed everything was called Lynx, a modular drone system with predictive targeting and adaptive mapping. It was revolutionary. Months of data, sleepless nights, trial runs, and arguments with upper management had led to this point. The prototype was weeks from launch. It was also my ticket to promotion. And that's when things started to go wrong. The code began to misfire. A navigation loop caused the drones to circle erratically. Calibration data went missing from the shared drive. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I'd overlooked something. But the errors were too specific, too strategic. They weren't accidents. They were breadcrumbs. Someone wanted me to look incompetent. The real confirmation came one Tuesday morning when I saw Eliam at his desk, phone angled downward, whispering. He didn't notice me enter the room. I moved quietly behind the glass partition, my pulse in my throat. His laptop was open. The reflection from the screen mirrored faintly in the glass. There it was, an email thread, subject line, revised Lynx schematics, courtesy of our inside contact. The recipient's address ended in @veridiantech.com, our biggest competitor. For a second, the world tilted. The man who had stood beside me, cheered my late nights, and toasted my achievements at every milestone had been feeding our designs to Veridian. I didn't breathe. I didn't confront him. Instead, I smiled when he noticed me. He closed his laptop too fast, too nervous. "Hey, Ray, you good?" I nodded, forcing a casual tone. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." He smiled back, that same too perfect grin. For 2 nights, I barely slept. I replayed everything, every compliment, every gesture, every question he'd asked that had felt innocent then, but now dripped with intent. I thought about reporting him immediately, but the truth was, without evidence, I'd be the one accused of paranoia. So instead, I decided to give him what he wanted, and make it poison. For the next week, I acted as if nothing had changed. I laughed with him, shared coffee, even let him hover over my desk while I reworked the Lynx flight protocol. Only this time, the designs I shared weren't real. They were close enough, lines of code that mimicked real functionality, but held one fatal flaw, buried deep within the adaptive logic. A self-referencing loop that wouldn't reveal itself until the drone reached production testing. To the naked eye, even to a programmer, it looked perfect. But when it executed, it would collapse the entire system. I saved the file under the usual naming pattern, uploaded it to the shared folder, and made sure Eliam saw it. He downloaded it within the hour. The trap was set. 3 weeks later, Veridian Tech unveiled their new autonomous drone system at a glossy press conference. Sleek, silver-bodied machines with revolutionary adaptive control written all over the presentation. Watching from my office, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. They powered on the demo drone, The first 30 seconds were flawless. The movement was smooth, graceful, until the logic loop kicked in. The drone spun, recalibrated, then spun again. The signal cascaded through the demo fleet like wildfire. Within minutes, the stage erupted into chaos. $10 million of tech failed live before international media. Veridian's CEO's smile froze on screen, and I sat in my chair, coffee in hand, watching the implosion with quiet satisfaction. By the next day, the entire industry was buzzing. How did Veridian get that far without proper testing? Someone must have sabotaged them. The irony was perfect. By the end of the week, word reached Hendrix Dynamics' legal department that Veridian had filed an internal report, citing a leak from one of our employees. 2 days later, security arrived on our floor, and Ilium was escorted out in silence. No explanation, no argument, just the sound of his shoes on the polished tile and the weight of disbelief in every coworker's eyes. I sat there, expression blank, heart pounding in quiet rhythm. He glanced at me once, brief, searching. Maybe he saw the truth in my eyes, maybe he didn't, but it didn't matter, because I had won. It wasn't over though, not really, because victory in my world doesn't feel like joy. It feels like quiet, heavy silence. In the weeks that followed, Lynx was restored, its final build cleaned of the decoy code. We launched flawlessly. The board praised my resilience. I was promoted to lead designer. But at night, when the offices emptied and the city lights blinked below, I sometimes caught myself staring at the reflection in my monitor, wondering when I'd learned to weaponize trust. Months later, I got an anonymous email. No sender, no traceable header, just 2 lines. You play well, Ray, but you're not the only one who knows how. Attached was a screenshot of me working alone late at night, the same image I'd once seen reflected in the glass. My chest tightened. He had another copy, another set of eyes somewhere. I deleted the email, wiped the metadata, and leaned back, staring at the skyline. The air outside was sharp, electric, full of city noise and secrets. Maybe that was the price of survival here, in a world where loyalty was currency and revenge was just another form of proof. 2 weeks later, Veridian announced a merger inquiry with a foreign robotics firm. I watched the broadcast, and there he was, Ilium Stroud, in the background, shaking hands, smiling again, alive, employed, dangerous. But I wasn't afraid, because he taught me something invaluable: how to lie with conviction, how to defend with deception, and most importantly, how to win quietly. When I walked into the new Lynx lab the next morning, I paused at the door. My new team was already there: engineers, analysts, eager faces waiting for direction. I smiled and said, "First rule of design, never let your blueprint out of your sight." They laughed, assuming it was a joke. I didn't, because somewhere out there, another blueprint was already being stolen, another story already being rewritten, and I'd be ready this time, not just to defend what was mine, but to rewrite the game itself. That night, before leaving the building, I wrote one final note to myself, stored deep within the encrypted project logs. Trust is the most valuable technology and the most fragile. I locked the file, turned off the lights, and stepped into the night. The city below shimmered with secrets, its skyline reflecting on the glass like 1,000 open eyes. And as I walked away, I smiled, not because I'd destroyed my enemy, but because I'd finally learned the truth about power. It's not in what you build, it's in what you make others believe you've built.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.